Welcome to the 12th episode of the Off the Pole podcast. I'm Sarah Scott, and on this podcast I interview people from the pole community and beyond to help you train smart and dance more. Today my guest is Michael Donohue, co-owner of Fierce Fitness Dance Studio in Dublin, Ireland, and international competitor and instructor. He's known for being a multidisciplined artist in things like flying pole, trapeze, and even balloon making. I wanted to get him on to discuss his plant-based diet and how he applies this to his training. Hope you enjoy our chat. Welcome, Michael. Thank you for doing my podcast. Nice to have you on.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
We've already discussed briefly, but you are in your car. Do you want to tell the people why are you in your car?
Yeah, I'm sitting in my car at the moment because I left the studio to run a few errands. I had to go to the bank, but also two of the girls are going through some rehearsals in there, so it's quite loud. So even in our reception waiting room, it's quite loud. So I said it'll be a lot more quiet and easier to hear you if I was sitting in the car.
I actually do some of my voiceovers in the car because it's like good acoustics in the car. I think it's like
I totally agree. Some of the old YouTube videos I would do on conditioning and stuff, I would always record the audio in the car because there's it's like a little sound room. There's no kind of echo.
Yeah.
There's no kind of outside sound, so it's really cool. I think it's a good place to do interviews.
I should probably be in my car because I'm going to be a bit echoey today because I'm in a different room today, but. Probably
great to me.
I'll go out to my car as well. Anyway, right. So I wanted to get you on because I wanted to speak to you a little bit about plant-based nutrition and plant-based training because you're a big advocate for that. And I think it's a really important message to spread. And it's becoming more and more popular. Like a lot of people in the pole industry now are vegetarian or pescatarian or wanting to move not necessarily into putting a label on it, but definitely moving more towards that lifestyle. So what was maybe kind of your first introduction to it and what brought you to it in the first place?
Well, briefly, like I've been working within the fitness industry for about 15 years now. And I've always had an interest I'm one of those people that I've always never stopped researching or studying. I still haven't. So what happened is my mother and father were vegetarian first. And through just being at home with them and the meals they would give me, I just started becoming more open to some of the vegetarian type foods. But I wasn't vegetarian. I would still go out and eat meat or whatever I wanted. But that was my first kind of subjection to some of the plant-based alternatives to meat. And then I was decided that like I had met Terry Walsh or Terry Fierce, as she's well known now at this stage.
Yep.
And she was vegetarian when I met her. And about a year before I met her, I started into my research into plant-based nutrition and its effects on our physiology and biochemistry and all, just my own personal ambition. So researching, reading, listening to podcasts and so on. And then when she was vegetarian and I met her, I got the idea of like, I'd like to try. So I found myself just going from making the transition into vegetarianism, would still mean that I was still consuming eggs and dairy products, for example. And then I just started kind of experimenting more with vegetarian type foods. And then I was vegetarian for a number of years. And then through my continued research, I started trying to look at the idea of going whole plant-based. In other words, eliminating the eggs and the dairy products out. This is nothing to do with veganism. This is purely plant-based. Obviously, veganism stems more into all sorts of other avenues as well. Mm-hmm. And then I had made the decision to go vegan. I'm 4.5 years now vegan. So 4.5 years ago, around August time, I said, right, by January the 1st, I'm going to transition. So I started kind of continue my research. I started looking into experimenting more with different types of foods in preparation for when I transition, I wouldn't be completely shocked. Mm-hmm. And obviously I had had years of training and experience, my own fitness and my own study on nutrition and so on. So I kind of knew roughly what to play with. So then, 4.5 years ago on the January, I just decided to go at it. And that's kind of where I am at now at the moment. So I'm whole food plant-based now at the moment.
So is plant-based more like just looking at the nutrition side of it, and then vegans looking at more like the lifestyle as well, like more of the clothes you wear and things like that as well? Like, sorry, excuse my ignorance. Like, is there a difference, or is it?
I actually love that you asked that question because it's a really, really good question.
I just know other people will be like, because I'm thinking like, what I thought plant-based kind of was vegan, but because I'm vegetarian, but people then think that I'm then vegan, but I went, no, there is a big difference between vegetarian and vegan. Like there's layers to all of it. So explain.
Layers. the best way to kind of explain it is that like obviously a person who is vegan in the correct term is someone who follows a plant-based diet.
Hmm.
The reason why I like veganism is great. Now, I would consider myself a vegan. Like, in other words, I don't wear leather, I don't wear silk. My like personal hygiene products at home are all cruelty free. Even the bleach I use now to clean the toilet or the floor, I buy now eco-friendly, cruelty free brands.
Yeah.
That aside, a vegan diet does not necessarily mean a whole food plant-based diet. For example, Oreo cookies are vegan. Coca-Cola is vegan. McDonald's fries are vegan. It just means just if a food has no animal derivatives in it, it is technically vegan. I always talk, like what I'm talking to you now, about whole food plant-based diets or nutrition plans because they are key. They happen to be vegan, but they are key for optimum health. What I advocate then is a whole food plant-based diet because vegan diet is not necessarily a healthy diet.
Mm.
So my diet would orientate around whole plant foods and less of the processed plant foods. For example, vegan cheeses, vegan burritos, vegan hot dogs, things like that. They are plant-based, but they're not necessarily the healthiest approach, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's the struggle for a lot of people when they're trying to move from a meat-based diet to a more plant-based diet is there's a lot of vegetarian options, but a lot of them are like very, very processed. They're meat substitutes. So they're just very highly processed things. And I don't tend to find that my body gets on with those at all. Like a lot of soya, a lot of cheese, a lot of like fake cheeses, and a lot of sugar and a lot of things like that. And a lot of the time when you go to restaurants, the options is the vegan option will be like a bowl of chips or bread or things like that. So people do find it really difficult. So have you found
Yeah.
just like your day-to-day meals, like for example, so take us through maybe like an average day of eating, like what would you have like breakfast, lunch and dinner if you follow that system?
Yeah, I do. Okay, so just to answer the first thing, yeah, the in terms of the approach to veganism worldwide now is obviously shops are providing more plant-based alternatives. Like there was an announcement made, a report came from Tesco's UK yesterday, announcing that their profits have really soared, and their market research has shown it's due to the plant-based foods they're providing. Because again, veganism is coming a bit more into the open market now as such. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I
it's
get
not
loads of
necessarily.
vegan stuff from Tesco's. It's great. They've got like a whole
Yeah,
range. It's really, really nice.
it's really good, but it's not always necessarily the healthy approach. And that's where I kind of make the distinction is that in terms of the benefits to the planet and the benefits to preventing harm to living beings, if someone wants to eat Oreo cookies and vegan hot dogs all day, that's fine. But from a nutritional viewpoint, and especially from someone like myself and you, and I'm assuming a lot of your listeners who are involved in pole and maybe other sports, it's not the optimum choice to make for your health or for your performance.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, yeah, so I'm very clear about saying whole plant based. So, very quick overview of my typical average day. So, I start every single morning with a shot of organic wheatgrass. During the late spring and summer, I grow my own, but during the winter, I buy the packaged amounts in the shops. So, reason for that as well is after fasting, first thing on an empty stomach, you're dumping in a concentrated source of amino acids, zinc, chlorophyll, which is what gives green plants its bright green color. So it's highly alkalized and highly beneficial, like blood cleansing, and it's a really good thing to put through your body straight away. So I drink a shot of that, or like a glass of it, and then while that's kind of going through my system, I usually feed my cats and do a few bits and pieces that I kind of prepping the meals for the rest of the day. And then I'd have breakfast, which is a typical bowl of organic porridge oats with almond milk and some flax seeds or linseed, as it's also known, and then some cinnamon. That's my typical breakfast. In the middle of between breakfast and lunch, typical snack, I'd usually have a banana with some cashew nuts just to keep my kind of energy level stable because usually mornings is either private lessons for myself or admin work like you're doing there. So I kind of need to be not fairly alert. Lunch then varies. Most of the time I prep my own lunches, but I'm also fortunate that there's two places now close to my studio, organic whole plant food kind of restaurants, which are really, really good. They're not your typical, like you said, they also have chips on the menu. Like I just put a thing on my Insta story there. The guy had made broccoli and coconut soup.
Yeah, I
And
saw that today. You always have really good pictures of food from those cafes. I'm so
yeah,
jealous.
this guy gets up at 4 a.m. His actual kitchens are next to our studio, which is amazing. And
Mm.
the cafe itself is down in the town in Maynooth here. But he gets up at 4:30. Everything is made fresh. And this guy doesn't even use OXO vegetable stock cubes. He refuses. Everything is just fresh food.
Super fresh,
But
yeah.
when I'm prepping, my typical thing, Sarah, is I prep food though on a Sunday for the week. So my main staple complex carbohydrate source would be one of typical three scenarios. Number one is black rice. Now, regular rice is good, but black rice is a little bit more wholesome, a bit more nutrient dense. You've got millet or quinoa. They're the three I choose from the most. Millet's a great grain for any of those who are gluten intolerant. It's very energy. It gives you a lot of energy, but doesn't cause any bloating or kind of irritation to most people.
Yeah.
So that's my typical lunch is a carbohydrate, and I would mix that with beans. Now I advise experimenting with all different types of beans. My favorite is the likes of cannellini, pinto, and mung beans. They're just my own personal favorite. But using a variety of beans then, and then I would mix that together using either an organic tomato sauce, or else I would kind of add in some vegetable like courgette, maybe a bit of carrot. So it's just like this kind of, I wouldn't call it a stew, but it's just a
Like a
hefty
mishmash
kind of
of just
meal.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
similar to what I
of
do.
usually the complex carbohydrate, and then the beans, and then a little bit of your veg, and then alongside that I would have the first of my two salads. I have two salads per day, which are mainly greens. Now the way I advise people on salads is go nuts, do whatever you want to do, but try and make 70% of your salad bowl greens. So that's either like rocket or arugula, as it's known in most places in Europe. You've got spinach, you've got kale, you've got watercress, you've got lamb's leaf lettuce, just greens basically. And then you can add your onion, your tomato, your mushroom, whatever you feel like doing. So I would have that for lunch. After lunch, then it's more admin. And then I train 6 days a week for about 3 hours a day. So my training's typically 3 to 3:30 till 6 p.m. before my classes start in the evening. So that's fueled me up then for my training. But sometimes I would add in a rice cake or two with some of the almond butter or peanut butter on it. Sometimes. But if I've had a big enough lunch, I'm kind of okay.
Mm-hmm.
Then I train away, and my training varies between pole, trapeze, and then conditioning. Then I give myself a window of approximately 30 minutes before my first class I teach that evening. I teach most evenings from about 7 p.m. till 10. So before I do my classes, I need to eat again. So I make my Parish Shake, which I've also put on the Insta story a couple of times. And that's comprised of some porridge oats, another portion of flax seeds, some spinach, kale, portion of blueberries, a banana. I have sponsorship by Pulson, who send me pea or hemp protein powders. So I throw a scoop of that in, and I pour almond milk on top of it. Sounds crazy, but when you whisk it up, it's you've got pretty much a kind of a nice chocolatey liquid flapjack kind of taste. And that gets me then through my training. And when I get home at 10:30, I'm starving again. And but again, I don't eat as much because it's late at night. So I usually do stir fry, just a portion of stir fried veg. That's usually broccoli, carrots, courgette, mixed peppers, whatever I have in the house. And I add a little bit of lentils into that. And then that's what I have before bed with some water. And then that's me pretty much for the day. That's my average day.
Cool. Because I know I asked in the Facebook community group, the Off the Pole community group, if anyone had any questions for you. And a lot of them were asking, like, what do you have before training? What do you have after training? And so that definitely answers a lot of that stuff, I think. Crystal wanted to know, are there any foods that you stay away from when training for a performance? And I was going to ask a similar question, like, do you switch it up around a competition? Like, would you increase anything or decrease anything? Or are you just literally just kind of looking at your body and seeing what your energy levels are like?
A really good question. The Typically before I train for a competition, well, the first thing I would do is first thing I have to say from the beginning, Sarah, is I don't count macronutrients. I don't count calories or anything like that. There's nothing wrong with that if that's what your goal is, and certain sports and activities deem that kind of discipline. I just do what I eat regularly throughout the day, every 3 to 4 hours minimum. And the basic rules that I think every man, woman, and child knows on the planet, to make sure you get lots of greens in and good complex carbohydrates, keep your refined sugars low. Personally, I try and keep caffeine low. Like, I don't drink coffee or anything like that, or take pre-workouts. But in terms of before a competition, I would eat very, very similar. One things I would do differently, I wouldn't be out drinking alcohol. Now, my alcohol consumption is not crazy at all, but I would stop it altogether. The meals would stay pretty much the same, but before competition, about 3 to 4 days before my competition day, I would increase the carbohydrate content just to increase more glycogen store in the muscles, because I know the amount of pressure they're going to be going through on stage, as well as accommodating the nerves and so on. But before competition, like what I've given you there is a brief overview of what I typically would eat most days, and I don't think I'd change it too much for competition, other than getting rid of alcohol and being a little bit more strict on, like, at the moment, if Saturday comes along and I feel like going out and having a vegan pizza with a big bowl of chips, I will. Whereas I would definitely not do that pre-competition as well.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Have you found that there are a lot of misconceptions about, especially someone like yourself who is predominantly known for like your strength and things like that, when people hear that you're vegetarian or vegan, or this is especially what I've found, people are like, oh, where do you get your protein from? Number one, that's always the first question. And two, has it affected your strength? Like, have you found any other misconceptions that people have come across when they hear you're plant-based, or do you just get the normal questions and then how do you answer them?
Yeah, well, I get the protein one all the time, and like same as yourself, and same as every plant-based or semi-plant-based athlete on the planet.
And again, how big my shoulders are? There's no problem. There's no problem there with protein.
Yeah, exactly. And I have to just, like, that point is, in my opinion, it stems from absolutely phenomenal, amazing marketing by meat, dairy, and egg industries.
Yeah, there's a lot of propaganda around protein.
Yeah, that's all that stems from. It's been like, you've had it, your parents have had it, your grandparents, great grandparents. I'm the same. Everyone who's listening to this, it's the same. And it's literally all of these things. This is one of the areas I really researched deep into, and you uncover that, like, it's all just based on propaganda. When you actually try and orientate the original source, it's just someone literally just had this idea and they went with it, and people have bought it. So again, I don't shove information down people's throats. I find that by just people knowing you're plant-based and seeing the feats you do and the level of training you do, I always just say the same to them, that like all amino acids they originate from the atmosphere, and then through biochemistry they're conformed into the soil, and then they're in the soil, they come up through the soil in terms of plant materials. The animals eat the plant materials, and then we either eat the animals or we eat the plants. But amino acids can be sourced. You don't need to consume animals or anything else to obtain them. You can obtain them fresh from the ground if you choose to.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a big thing with people, like especially sorry to say it, especially vegans have quite a bad rap at the minute for being quite preachy to people. And I think that there's a line, isn't there? It's like, it's really good to try and educate people, and it's nice to stand up for your point of view and to have an opinion. Like, everyone's entitled to their opinion on the internet. It's just sometimes people, I think, can maybe take it too far, or people aren't ready to hear that information, or they're just at a different point in their lives or a different point in their diet or training and things. And I think we all have to respect each other's choices, but at the same time, it's like there are some underlying things that I think ethically, and sustainably, that people should be moving a little bit more towards at least trying a plant-based diet for a few days a week, 1 day a week. I've got a great recipe book, which is just meat-free Mondays, which is just try and eat less meat on a Monday, just little steps. And actually, the more you start researching it, the more you actually cut down and cut down and cut down. Like, I was pescatarian for a while, and then now my brother's doing a master's degree in marine conversation. Now I know more. So now I'm full vegetarian, just because as soon as you know, you're just like, no more fish for me then, So ignorance is bliss sometimes.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're absolutely right. And one of the approaches I take towards veganism or plant-based diets is that, like obviously you're a vegetarian, but if I happen to be sitting across the table from you now in a restaurant, and you ordered barbecue spare ribs and you were snapping them apart and chewing them up and all, I wouldn't open my mouth to you. I wouldn't pass any remarks.
It's someone else's choice.
It's not the way it works. And also, like, I'm only 4.5 years at this. Like, I'm 36 years of age. I had to go through a cycle of life. So I find the best way to approach people is by being gentle, and just kind of, I'd never bring up, it's really interesting, I never ever bring up veganism at a dinner table. It always gets brought up to me, because
especially when they're eating meat and you're like, do you want to talk about it now, or do you let's just not talk, I'll just tell you later, just don't ask me about it now.
9 times out of 10 I don't like talking about it, because, like, I've been researching this so much in terms of the physiology and biochemistry and nutritional end of it, and also now in the last 2 years, as you're talking about marine conservation, the environmental impact, is I don't really necessarily at the same time want to make people feel too bad, so I'd rather just stay quiet about it. But I find my approach of posting information on nice places to eat or good foods to eat that are plant-based, and then posting videos of training and living a good lifestyle, that to me encourages people more to be open up to the idea than me sticking a video up of cows getting their throats cut and so on. That's some people's approach, and that's fine. I think the animal rights activists are doing a huge amount to help. But in my opinion, from my viewpoint, the advantage I have is the level of training I do, and what I eat can try and help people understand that absolutely you can do the same.
Exactly. And how have you found, because you also do multiple things, you do pole as well. I think that's probably what you're most known for in the pole industry, but you also have, at your studio, you have, like a playground, basically. You have like trapeze, and you have hand balancing stuff and balloon making, I've seen there as well. Do you find that they complement each other, or do you find that it helps balance, like they all have to balance each other out, or is it just you've always done a mix of everything, so that's what you continue to do?
I think it's on an individual basis. If you just want to train pole 7 days a week for 5 hours a day, then train pole 7 days a week, 5 hours a day. Do what makes you happy. I started off as a breakdancer, and I just happened to be training breakdancing in a gymnastics facility. That's why a lot of people think I'm a gymnast. I'm not. I just trained as a breakdancer in a gymnastics facility, and I just became open to their style of training, and I just started asking more questions. And then I started getting coached in gymnastic rings by one of the main coaches, and that's where my ring journey started from. And then I worked in the fitness industry, like I said. I did a bit of powerlifting, a bit of this and a bit of that. And then I just saw pole, and I was like, oh God, that looks awesome. And I tried that. So at the moment, yeah, I've taught myself quite a lot of different disciplines and arts, and I've just been like that since I was young. Like when I was 15 and 16, I wasn't out in the corner drinking. I was in my bedroom making balloon animals and stuff. I was always interested in doing more alternative types of things to teach myself.
It's a good life skill. You're using it now, so that's fine.
Well, I use the balloon modeling a lot now for I do class now with special needs people, and for the children.
Awesome.
For the circus classes for the kids. So they do all their hard work, and then I finish the class by teaching them how to make a balloon sword, and then they all beat me up with the balloon swords. But
you should do that in your adult classes too. That'd be popular.
Yeah, probably so, shouldn't I? But pole would be my main thing at the moment. I'm focusing a lot on flying pole because I've got a couple of performances coming up, and I adore flying pole because I came from pole. And the challenge of the flying pole, the entire biomechanics are different. Like learning a deadlift handspring on a flying pole is fantastically harder than a regular pole because the thing is moving. But anyone out there, if you're learning multiple apparatuses, they 100%, your original question, they do complement each other. Like the basic method of inverting your tuck support invert on a set of rings is identical to the way you would do it on a trapeze or a aerial hoop. The same mechanics through your lats and your biceps. Well, like a chopper on pole is the same as doing a chopper on cordelice, except it moves a little bit. So they 100% will complement each other. And the more you do, I think, and especially my big thing with everyone, I'll say it now, is whatever apparatus you're training on, whatever your main source of training is, you must do conditioning. You must keep your body in top form in terms of the mobility, your flexibility, and then some form of resistance training to complement. Although it's how you reduce your risk of injury. So I definitely think a big mix is a good idea if that's what you want.
Yeah. And the conditioning side of it, again, it's like that's kind of what the whole off the pole movement has been about. It's like it's not always the fun stuff, but it's actually the most important stuff. And it's not necessarily Instagram worthy, but it'll give you the foundation to be able to do all that crazy stuff on the pole. And if you just do the crazy stuff, then you're just kind of shortening your longevity on the thing that you love doing. So yeah, I think that's really good advice. And you cannot say it enough. Like we all need reminders to be, to balance, we will get sucked into just doing the stuff we enjoy, not necessarily things that we should be doing. So I don't think you can say it enough.
Yeah, I go through it all the time with my students, like every day, that if they are learning a muscle up on the ring, like some of my advanced class now at the moment in Circus Fit are working on all their last parameters or prerequisites for the final muscle up phase, but they all need to do their external rotator stretches. They all need to do like you can't just dive into it. And the same with pole, you know yourself, like if you're going to practice Phoenix for an hour and you haven't warmed up or trained or conditioned your rotator cuff, you're going to run into a spot of bother.
Yep.
So some form, even if you don't do any conditioning, start off with a little bit. Start off with like 2 or 3 times a week, just starting even very basic foundation movements like push-ups and squats and so on, just something to keep your body in tune. And as you get used to it, then you can delve a little deeper into more complex patterns and movements because 100% it will definitely help your performance on your apparatus, and it will significantly reduce your risk of injury on your apparatus as well.
Yeah. Bonus and double win. Cool. Well, that literally, the time has like flown by. We're already at like nearly 30 minutes. But I did want to finish with this question that Joe from the group, I did warn you about this at the beginning. He would like to, he or she, I didn't even write it down. Joe, God damn it, apologies. When you eat seeds, do you ever get scared they're going to grow a tree inside you? Very serious question.
That's a really good question. I like that one. I never heard that one before.
I don't know if that's a real question, but I feel like I just want to give you the questions that the group told me.
Yeah, no, I like the question. My dad always said when I was small, because when I was very young, I was obsessed with eggs. He said, someday I'm going to wake up with feathers out of my ass. But that never happened. So, no, I don't think you're going to... I think you're safe, Joe. You're going to grow a plant inside. It hasn't happened yet. And hopefully it won't ever happen. But interesting enough, he does bring up that funny question, as funny as it is, has reminded me of a point that I actually wanted to state.
Yeah.
For those of you asking about nutrition and so on, and that's people obsessing and worrying about omega 3 and 6s and all these. No, you have to get your omega 3 and so on. Like the most concentrated source of digestible omega 3 fatty acids on planet Earth is in flaxseed. So interesting to his point there. So that's why I said to you earlier on, I have 2 portions of flaxseed a day, in the morning and later on in the day in the afternoon, because it's extremely easy for your body to digest them, and it's the most absorbable source of omega-3. But I don't think it will make you grow a tree inside you.
Okay.
I don't think that'll happen.
Well, you heard it here first, because that's a daily worry for me.
If it ever happens, I'll let you know, and you can let him know then.
Him or her. I put Joe. I didn't write it down. I was in a rush. I only announced it this morning that I was going to be asking you questions, or last night. Okay. Not very long, so they did good to even ask anything. So thanks off the bowl community for bearing with me when I thrust people into. Anyway, right. So I've taken up enough of your time already. Much appreciated. I will. So you're going to be able to watch this video on YouTube. The podcast will be on the blog section of the website along with the transcript, and I can link anything like your social media and your website and bits and pieces like that, so people can find you and follow along all of your cafe food stories.
Yeah, the Instagram. The Instagram would be the best one in terms of following kind of closer inspection of my training style and kind of food. Facebook, I obviously post on Facebook quite a lot, but Instagram would definitely be more and easier to see. Like it's easier just to see a picture or a little description of what I'm doing. Cool, perfect. Well, thank you, Michael. Much appreciate taking the time. So much for having me. That was amazing. That was fun.
We'll speak soon. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
I hope you guys enjoyed that insightful look into Michael's training on a whole food, plant-based diet. I love the fact that he did a lot of research into the subject so that he could perform optimally and doesn't push his ideas but leans more towards letting his own success do the talking. You can read the transcript of this interview on the blog section of the Off the Pole website, where I'll also link to all of Michael's social media, and you can watch the video of the interview on YouTube.